Hey guys, welcome to JoyScoreLive Special Edition. Yes, we have Kat Haber with us today. She's a TEDxVail expert, produces those shows. She has over 2 billion hits on her programming. And she's also a climate change expert, or climate reality expert. And we want to get her in here, special edition, because she wasn't able to come into the regular programming. She's got lots of business to do up there in LA. Hey Suzanne, I guess she's working with Al Gore right now, mentoring a bunch of kids with Al Gore.
Absolutely. The Climate Reality Project, she'll be able to fill us in. But she texted me yesterday saying that California has signed up for using all renewable energies, which is a
California,
huge
that's a big deal.
accomplishment.
Good job, California.
Planet Earth.
That's right. Reusables, renewables, everything, recycle,
Absolutely.
Everything. That's what she's all about. I guess that's part of what she brings. I can't wait to hear what else is going on up there and hear her wonderful advice, given the fact that she spends a lot of her time mentoring people, right?
Yeah, she spends quite a bit of time. A lot of people might not realize the TEDxVail talks and TEDx talks. They might see them and not realize the work that goes in, but in having the opportunity to get to know her, she mentors them for about a year before they prepare their speech so that they can have that moment to really share their voice and do it in a way that they're really excited about, and it's impactful.
That's really powerful programming. I love watching, just randomly getting on that TEDx station and just sitting there listening to all these smart people talk about all these wonderful things, right?
Absolutely, and it definitely improves your well-being by being inspired, educated, excited maybe to do something that you haven't done before.
But what do you say? We get her in here.
Let's do it.
Hey, let's see if we can find Kat. Kat Haber!
Yay!
Kat Haber in the house, folks.
How are you? Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to JoyScoreLive.
Wow, you look beautiful. You're like just the perfect accoutrement.
She looks like a sunset. She's got sunset colors going on over there. So tell us a little bit about that. That's kind of interesting. 1 hour, what'd you say? 1 hour of...
Just 1 hour capturing the sun's light, that energy, for 1 hour could power the entire planet's energy needs for an entire year.
Wow.
That's incredible. Those little photon packets are pretty powerful, then, huh? They get a lot of power.
And who's
punch.
spearheading that technology? I mean, I know we have a lot of solar power batteries and generating on campuses now with, covered garages, but who's the spearheader of that?
Right here in California, you happen to be the leaders of renewable energy. In fact, just yesterday, you passed SB 100, which means that 100% of your energy will be sourced from renewables.
That's awesome.
Wow.
By 2030.
California's good. We got rid of the straws, the balloons, and now this other stuff.
You're good.
We're kicking butt. California, we like to pay attention to the details now, don't we? We'll get rid of them straws. But listen, our listeners have the privilege of having you here, and you have all of this wonderful knowledge, and you mentor so many people. Yeah. And it'd be fun if you could kind of take in your audience and give us some advice. What do you find to be the central issue generally that we suffer with as human beings relative to your exploration of people?
Oh boy, I don't know if
like if I'm mentoring, let's say this.
Yeah.
Like if I'm mentoring, if I need mentoring, what is it that I need?
Well, if you're in a relationship with a mentoring relationship with me, it means that you have a spark of something that you care passionately about, and I see that light flicker, and I can grab onto it and just blow a little and allow that fire to maybe catch some tinder in your community.
Nice.
So that the fire that you have in your heart really
Suzanne
catches on.
Oh, wow. And now we have like the tambourine or with cymbals. That sounded like.
When somebody nails something, those little Buddha bells come out. You know what I mean? It's like, because that's exactly where we want to go. You're looking for the spark. So how did you come upon the spark that you're talking about? When did you notice in yourself, or is it just something you see in other people, or?
I don't know that I've really ever noticed it in myself. I just always was willing to take action on the things that I was passionate about. and the people who give TEDx talks, the emergent women leaders from developing nations, the young college students from UCLA, UCSB, Riverside that I'm working with this weekend at the Climate Reality Leadership Project.
The Climate Reality Leadership Project. All right, gotcha.
Vice President Al Gore's initiative to awaken the world to taking action on the climate crisis. So
how do you go? So how do you go into that? So you got a bunch of people.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of, I guess, ladies or guys and ladies and
2,200 people from around the world, 40 different countries.
Well, that's extraordinary. So what does that syllabus look like? I mean, what does that thing look
powerful, really
240
powerful.
countries. Wow, you almost have them all.
Give us a little insight into what that syllabus looks like and what you're going to pass on to these people.
So the first day, 120 mentors just went over the agenda because it's so packed. It's 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's listening to Al Gore give his 2-hour presentation. He's collected over the past 15 or 20 years over 2,500 slides. He gave us how to look at the current crisis for climate, everything from fires that are happening here to floods that are going on right now all over the world. So it's up to date.
So what are the top 5 things on that syllabus that Gore's got going on there?
Well, I just left a very serious panel on fires in California. Your fire chief lost her house. 6 men were killed in the fires.
God.
Australia and New Zealand are lending us 100 firefighters a year now.
Yeah.
So the light at the end of that tunnel is what? Those are the downside numbers, but what do we do about that?
So
what is the call to action?
Yeah, we can all do so many different things. It just depends on where we are, where are our spheres of influence. Everyone in America, if you're over 18, you can vote, you can influence your community, you can activate others to vote, you can have those tough conversations with your conservative family or friends.
Right.
What are they voting for? I mean, what are the initiatives on the table?
Well, be informed, first of all. Educate yourself and recognize that this is an existential threat.
Right.
This is not sometime in the future. This is right now. Coming from Alaska, I can list dozens of indicators from glaciers melting, spruce bark beetle, methane tundra releases, ocean acidification, villages falling off into the ocean.
Well, that's been going on since the 70s. I mean, the oak trees went out, and the world's been, I guess we're in a state of extinction, basically losing literally thousands of species a day, given the rainforest.
True.
Now that's
rainforest going down.
probably overwhelming to some.
Yeah.
Well,
So what are our simple action steps like to get?
Well, if it's the vote, I mean, nothing personal against politicians, but these are the slowest moving, most argumentative people on the planet. I don't know. I don't know what is it. Is it a more on our shoulders individually, or do you want to put it on? Is Al saying we need more money to fund certain things federally, or is the responsibility being put on each and every one of us? Or, I mean, how is it?
Yeah. There is no us and them anymore. Fundamentally, I believe that it's all about us recognizing that we're all in this together.
Absolutely.
And not just human beings, but all species have really been sounding alarms for us humans, and we've tended to ignore them. So,
is there a bright light at the end of that tunnel? So let's say an ideal circumstance, right? Like, if Al Gore and you had a wish list, what would be like the top 3 things that the globe could do to actually
take action,
kind of reverse some of this situation?
Build political will for policies that are climate friendly. Engage yourself and your community in doing everything you can on your own, not waiting for those politicians. So if you drive a gas car, what could you do to shift to an electric vehicle? If you drive a car to work, could you bike? Could you walk? Could you live closer? And And the final thing is really understand that I feel like this is more a spiritual and moral crisis than it is anything else, because I feel like we've lost our connection.
So let's talk a little bit about, and knowing you a little bit, like your connection to the indigenous and the indigenous ways. So when we, having had the opportunity to work with different Native American tribes and indigenous tribes in the Amazon, there's a simplicity and there's a deep, deep reverence for the earth that we walk on as a living spiritual organism. Mm-hmm. Yet, some people are like, well, I don't really care. I'm entitled to this, that, or the other, even to a consumption point. So if you can share a little bit from your relationship of the spiritual and Mother Earth, or whatever, however you want to refer to it.
So Serving Wild Foundation, which is International Wilderness Conservation, I've had the privilege to be in conversation with many sacred leaders of those indigenous tribes, and they report to us that we really only have about 10 years to figure this out. And I don't know if we will make it through it. I just know that I'm doing everything I can with as many people as I can, as quickly as I can.
So what is it? So if you got 10 years before the climate shifts into a whole nother pattern, right?
Yeah.
So the silver lining is what? The silver lining, the couple of silver linings, correctly? We have technology that's more efficient. We have actually the ingenuity to actually shift these things. So it's really no excuse relative to what we have available to us and what we can apply, correct?
We do have some broken human systems here. One of them is our democracy is being hacked by lobbyists and multinational corporations. So many of the things that we voters think we are being represented are not actually being taken action on.
These state and federal level as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, these things actually happen on a very local level.
Yeah.
Don't they? Like communities deciding
It's
within
not
the...
working. Yeah.
Hey, Bobby, we got a sound issue.
Can you hear us without him on?
I can hear you without it.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, good.
That's works. That might be more comfortable.
So it seems like it would come down to a lot of what you were just sort of... She's talking about sort of a three-tiered problem here.
Right.
We're out of balance spiritually, which puts us out of contact with the world around us directly.
Correct.
Right, because we're living in a more inner world. We have a federal government that's more concerned about security than it is about whether we make it through the next 10 years or not. Right.
Well, our bloated military budget of $700 billion this year might indicate that.
Right. Well, that's always been the case with the United States. We've always had an exorbitant military expense. And then we have what's interesting is happening is it seems like states are taking more initiatives, as they should be all along anyway.
Bingo!
That's
it.
There's no reason for the states to really be being prostitutes to the federal government.
Yeah,
right?
And our cities are as well. Mayor Garcetti just spoke to us about all the incredible initiatives that are happening here in LA.
But it kind of does feel like it's shifting. It kind of does feel like the states are not going, oh, give me. No, you know what? F you. We have to take initiative because these are our values, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's trickling down into the local levels, is it not?
It is.
I kind of feel it.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I have been sensing that too.
Yeah, I mean, there's like city repair projects in Venice Beach where people come from all over. A, because they want to connect with people. B, they want to do good, and they repair medians because the city can't get to it, so they just do it. They're circumventing the system. We don't have to wait for the backlog,
I do agree. I feel like people are getting, if it's going to change, it's up to me. And if I can't do it myself, who else can I get on my team to help me change this?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's kind of profound, but the country itself is really mentally ill. Right?
Yeah, it is.
So, but because of that, there seems to be more seeking than normal. Like people don't want to remain in this condition of distraction. So that that study brings us back into the present moment. It brings us back into connection with the earth. There you go. There's your earphones.
Exactly. Oh, thank you. Okay. Or I don't even need to use them. I'm good with them. Yeah, no. I'm
Thank
fine.
you, Bobby.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it seems like that pursuit of our own health is inevitably bringing us back around to the health of the earth. Because when we stop and we open our eyes, when we're better, right?
It's meta. Nothing is separate, in my view.
Right.
Nothing is separate from another. We're all fractal expressions of something grander. So the more aligned we can be in our interior, as above, so below.
Yeah.
So as we can align that here, we see those things start to fall into place. So when we see a political system that is broken, corrupted, angry, divisive,
out of balance.
what is that
Certainly out of
part
balance.
within us in our own life? Where do we need to make those shifts? And then where can we be kinder, gentler, more connected?
Well, it might not come down to kinder, gentler. It might be actually more assertive and more initiative, which is not kinder and gentler. It's actually taking an urgent initiative that is based on reason.
What if it could
Object
be
critical
both?
thinking.
Well, it has to be both because people are not snowflakes. We're actually a little bit more coarse than that. And to send people into motion sometimes take a little kick in the butt.
Well,
right?
and I have been with people in cultures that are incredibly tender, and that kind of assertive aggressiveness actually produces the opposite result. So
we're talking about Americans. We're not talking about native people connected to the earth. You're talking about people that are disconnected from that sensitivity, right? So you're talking, if we're thick-headed and lost in our own initiatives, and we're not able to pay attention to what's going on around us, it takes a real leader, and it takes a firm hand, I think.
Well, so if you share, and I can share my own reflections, but if some of the leaders, you typically are male. You know, in indigenous tribe, I like to clarify that there are male and female roles, and they're respected, and you don't say, oh, I have to do that role. You know that to be in harmony with the earth system, that these roles are very important. Down to in Peru, they'll plant the maca seed that's really popular. Male and female have to plant that because it's a balancing between the yin and the yang energy. So they take that very seriously, and other people will be like, who cares? Just throw the seeds in. I'm a woman. I can just do it without the man. So if you can share a little bit about the leaders and how still they are, because you're talking about take action and focus.
I'm talking about Americans, not indigenous people attached to the earth that are sensitive to the ebbing and flowing lunar cycles and the changing of the seasons that actually honor solstice. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about a person that doesn't even know winter is here because they got to go to work.
Yes, but there's something really profound.
No, they don't know it's winter in New York. Because they haven't taken the time to pay attention. But
there's something really profound because these men, the men in particular, are so still. They're very joyous. And they know, they're like, you don't cross them. Like, they don't have to speak. And if you ask a dumb question, they won't even talk to you. Like, they're just like, okay, you figure it out.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason I do TEDx Youth. Because that technology, entertainment, and design leadership among young people is so refreshing, so
I bet
idealistic, so hopeful that in the midst of these existential crises that I try to take action on every day, I also know that I'm inspiring leaders of the next generation that if and when we survive this next decade, they will be prepared to live a more balanced life than our generation has.
That's so beautiful. But listen, you know, the Americans overall, I have faith in them. I have faith that when the shit hits the fan, people will rise up and do the right things and put that stuff aside. We've always been considered a sleeping giant in a lot of respects. But we're putting out 15% of the world's emissions.
Yes.
Right. So you got 85% to deal with. So what are we doing about that?
So in 2015, I was at the Paris Climate Accord. Yay, we got the whole world to agree on the same agreement.
Yay!
Fantastic.
That's fucking. That's a
I think we need
miracle right there.
a
That's
cowbell, but
Damn ding, 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 ding.
And I know some may be very disappointed that President Trump, one of the first things that he did was to pull us out of that accord. The good news is that doesn't actually take effect until after the 2020 election, which is another reason you should vote, get everyone you know to vote, go out and help others get people to vote, be educated. Voting matters.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I'm still a little concerned about what you expect a bunch of federal politicians to do. I'm still not clear on how they're going to help it out.
Well,
what's to keep individual alliances from making deals with other countries on their own? You have billionaires. You have high tech. You have tech companies that actually run the world.
Right. It's true. Multinationals have an outsized influence on decisions that are being made. It's their lobbyists that are being paid, and it's their lobbyists who are actually renting committee assignments for Congress people. Yeah. It's those lobbyists who are writing the laws while the congressman goes to the fundraiser that night because he's so busy he can't write the laws or be informed.
Well, that was a problem with the Paris Accord before, is that you had the criminals in there setting the policy and showing up and giving money.
Vice President Gore was very instrumental in shifting that.
Good.
He actually brought India to the table. That was a big shift. We got it signed. We're supposedly pulling out now, but if we don't re-elect President Trump, if we put someone else in the presidency, there is a chance that we can stay in that Paris Accord. But I was part of a global summit for local leaders. There were 750 people there. Right. 1/3 of them were mayors from Chinese cities. That entire afternoon, they reviewed their 5-year plan. That was in 2015. 1/3 of that whole 750 people was already working on their 5-year plan.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. If we have competition, like here in Long Beach, they're committed to making the two of the largest ports in the world green.
They are.
And so that's a huge initiative. Plus, the city's committed to bringing in ways so it's like...
But that's not a federal project. That's a state project, right?
Right. That's a city project.
City project.
So power is coming now up from the bottom, but it's not sufficient and it's not scaled fast enough to make the big changes that need to occur in 10 years. So we do need to put different people in places of policy, and we need to do everything we can.
Can I be a devil advocate here? Rather, because right now politics is super divisive, and people don't necessarily get educated about a lot of stuff. It's hard for even the politicians to get educated. Is there a way that we can start coming to the table and have good, artful conversations and education where that we can educate people and say, hey, this is how it could be a win-win? Like, even if we look at something like a Monsanto that has genetically modified seeds and Roundup or whatever, they can actually be the change agent on the planet. Right. They have the infrastructure to do remediation and do non-GMO seeds. So we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Or why not approach these people and say, let's work together?
Working together, collaborating, finding your allies, building bridges, all of these things are really important. And going along with the current myth of the other doesn't really serve us. It doesn't help Earth for us to make conservatives the enemy. That doesn't change. Yeah,
well, that's what I'm saying.
Anything.
If you're gonna hang your hat on hoping that the federal government actually all of a sudden, maybe they fall off. Maybe if they all get in a big boat accident and then they can all be replaced.
Well, but that doesn't.
Then and you got some of these younger, brighter, more in touch minds come in. Then maybe you got a shot in hell. So I think you can have faith in this grassroots movement coming up from the bottom, influencing the states, and the states taking responsibility for their own natural resources. Like California has always had the toughest emissions, right? They can take initiative.
On my way here today, I asked the car to pull over because I took a picture of a cemetery, a dead tree, and an oil well, all in the same photograph. And that's what's happening all across the earth. We're getting signals from life forms telling us we're headed for the cemetery. Right. Stop drilling for oil. This is insanity,
Yeah.
and we have to stop.
So listen, you are clearly the world's child here. You're the world's mother. You're looking out for us. Where did that come from in you? Where is that parenting? Is that a part of where was the light that went off? Where was the urgency that lit this fire in your belly to get moving?
I don't know. I was picking rocks out of my grandfather's garden. I had a pet squirrel in an old oak tree that was cut down, and I cried as a little girl. I don't think for me, it wasn't one thing. It was just a whole pathway of profound sadnesses for how we were really abusing Earth. And I felt attacked every time a tree was cut down. Walking across the country in 2014 from LA,
Did you
Wilmington.
walk across?
Yes.
She walked across the country. Forrest Gump here in
I
the
love
house.
it.
In the Great March for Climate Action.
Wow.
What you don't know about
Where
this,
did you start?
Right here in Wilmington.
Oh, wow.
Where all
God.
of the oil derricks are.
And you went
Wow.
across
And-
the 30? Where did you go?
did your
we
feet grow? Your feet must have got bigger.
We went to DC. Yeah. But that day, California had been in a 3.5-year drought. That day at 4:00 in the morning, we had a blessing ceremony with indigenous people who live here. It rained all day. We were literally walking
totes.
through the streets in water up to our knees. We got hypothermic. But
my.
there were 2,000 people who started with us, nurses. Along the way, we saw dozens of men in oil-covered overalls repairing old cars that must be emitting massive amounts of carbon into the air. And right behind them, from the street, we could see oil derricks working constantly 24/7.
Yeah, so so you feel that walk was actually the major catalyst to help you tune back into the earth and get really proactive about this mission? Was that it? Was that one of it?
It's just another. It's like it's not. There's one thing. It's just peaks and valleys
listen
along
to this.
the way.
So you got a little platform here.
Yeah.
Little platform. So that's what all of us have to sort of wake up to.
Right.
So if you can kind of like take a moment and figure out where that transition was, you got time. We'll give you 30 seconds.
Do you remember that one
just to
moment?
find it. Just to find it, because all of us have to find it.
That's it.
All
I
of us have
can't
to
tell
find
you.
it. Well, maybe you can. If you find that thing in you, because I feel you. I see the light glaze of your eyes when you're describing the climate and the imagery, the juxtaposition of those imageries really moves you, and that's how we generate emotion, is by juxtaposing images. But there had to have been a total, like a moment. Like there was a moment in my life where I decided I was going to do Ironman. Right? Took me 10 years to figure out how to train properly to get through that race. But there was a moment of conviction, like, you know what, this is something I'm going to explore for myself. So I jumped in for 10 years. Like, I knew definitively where that was, watching the TV and watching Dave Scott and Scott Allen race it out in the final half mile of that race.
Yeah.
You know what? That so inspired me.
Yeah.
Maybe it was somebody that inspired you. Is it a hero like that? Or other than Al Gore, who's a huge hero?
There have been a series of heroes and sheroes, all of whom I'm profoundly grateful. Jane Goodall in 2009 at the Ninth World Wilderness Congress, Sylvia Earle at the 8th in Anchorage. I really feel like it's a series of heartbreaks along the way where I saw nature being trashed, and I just couldn't stand it. It just felt like somebody was taking a knife, sticking it through my heart every time.
People got to stand up for what you believe. Nothing better than standing up for Mother Nature, that's for sure. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Nothing better than
I'm a
that.
tree
Nothing
hugger, a
more.
literal tree hugger. I love tree.
But we all got to get back out and take a moment and see
Yeah.
what's happening. Look,
It's the balance.
You know what aggravated me? You know what gets me going is that I can't look up into the sky and see pure blue. I always see a layer of brown covering the blue.
Yeah.
No, and it wasn't always like that.
Yeah.
And so that's a constant reminder. I just look up and I see this layer constantly, no matter where I am. I'm like, wow, that is some serious.
So if we bring it simple
Carbon
things, because
emission.
if we think about that, like, if everyone took a couple less flights a year, even an active business travel, if millions of business travelers said, I'm going to sit, I'm going to be in my office and I'll be available remotely, but I'm going to forego 4 or 5.
Right.
That adds up quickly.
Yes.
Of course, the airlines have to adjust to that, but maybe we don't need as many flights at the end of the day.
And look, my mother was tuned into this in the 70s. She was tuned in 73, 4, 5, 6. She was totally tuned in because even living in Minnesota, you could see the climate shifting.
Yes.
You could question, like, the trees were dying, the subtle, wasn't even that subtle, actually. And so there's been a whole number of generations here that I think have had their fill. But I think how do you take the stigma out of, or how do you empower yourself to perceive things in such a manner to actually make a shift and not lose your lifestyle, or lose something that's been ingrained in your soul by previous generations, or lose something that's being actually put out there by pop culture? How do you, and is it necessary to let that go, or are we at a point where we can maintain this existence as human beings? Because it's becoming now more robots, more things are doing things for us. We're becoming more and more.
We're becoming a
attached
little
to
bit
couch.
lazy.
Well,
We're
there's
becoming
good
more.
news about AI and big data. They can do things far more efficiently than human brains can plan for. We need to put a price on carbon. They can do that far more effectively than we can analog. Even digital is going to be replaced by a fourth industrial tech revolution. So there's good news. There's lots of good news.
Yeah,
we are
feels like
more
it.
connected to ourselves and to our communities as a result of the world awakening to climate.
So I'll give you a good example. So let me say, I'll admit, I'm a little wrapped up in my own world, right? I'm wrapped up in my projects.
Self-centered.
I'm wrapped up in my stuff, and quite honestly, I've become detached from the actual cycles of the earth around me.
Yeah.
I've become detached. Now, I'm very, very much aware because I have been connected.
Here's an easy
But I
thing
tell
you
you
can
what,
do.
there are some things. I have a fire under my ass to do certain things. Like I said, I got that thing, and
Here's
it has
something.
nothing to do with global
Look,
warming.
you're a mile from the beach, right?
Right. Less.
Be outside when the sun rises and when it sets.
Did you hear that, people?
All you have to do.
You want to
Yeah.
reconnect?
You do that,
Get out.
and
Wake
that's
up.
a big deal.
Wake
Yeah,
up early enough
absolutely.
and take in that sunshine, take in that initial light, and
Dawn
appreciate
and
that silence.
dusk.
And why we're sharing some simple tasks, could you share with the listeners, because they may get a little overwhelmed, and that's
I'm overwhelmed.
Well, so that's the easy retraction. Like, I remember staying at a big resort with my parents, and I was like, okay, this huge resort in the middle of the desert. We're taking a bath. My kids are taking a bath. I'm like, can we just take the ice bucket and water the desert with it? These kind of seem silly, but my dad, who was a little kind of suspicious of me at time to time, he actually helped me. He's like, you're right. Why not? So why wouldn't the hotel have gray wastewater to irrigate their system versus just not using it? And Arizona actually has a really good reserve system and replenishes their water and doesn't go into drought, unlike our state. So can you share with the listeners some really helpful, simple ways that they could start to give back to our ecosystem? And that feeds the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of all of us.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, redesign, repurpose. There's a whole host of re's that you don't necessarily have to give up things. You can figure out how to get things as a result of doing that. I have a potluck party at my house next Friday, and we're sharing old clothes that we no longer fit into, treasure, jewelry, shoes, gadgets, games, all kinds of things. So that we're using those things as a way of bringing us together. It's really about community now, not separating ourselves from others, but recognizing that we're a part of a larger whole. This whole breakdown is really very complex. I can't possibly suggest a recipe or a menu for each one of us.
Right.
But the important thing is that we at least find a place to reconnect and care. not only for ourselves
yeah.
but for others.
Well, that sounds nice. That sounds really pretty coming out of your mouth, but I think there are common denominators. I think there are fundamental things that we all have to grasp before we can take a certain type of an action. Like we all have our own ways of doing things. Well, not really. We all function on exactly the same principles, fundamentally.
We do need air and water.
So because
and nutrition.
Air, food, water, and shelter are base needs.
So you're talking. See what I mean? You're looking at the common denominators, and when those things become threatened, now we can start to agree commonly that those things absolutely have to be in place in order for us to survive.
Right.
So you have those common denominators are something that I can get in touch with. Yes. That's certainly something all you got to do to get somebody else in touch with is, hey, you're not drinking any water for 3 days.
Yes.
And then find some clean water, or go out and challenge yourself to actually find clean water and survive for just 3 days, maybe.
Here's the shocking thing: uber wealthy people are going to die just as much as the poor when the climate crashes.
Right.
Well,
there is no safe place.
But we know 7 billion people will be dead in 100 years, right? We know that.
Oh, I don't know that. How could you know that?
Well, because all of us that are here now will be dead in 100 years. So about 7 billion.
You mean one life cycle.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Maybe not simultaneously. Simultaneously.
We all got to go, but it's really the quality of sustaining ourselves here, right?
So do we want to do this to our children or our grandchildren? Can we possibly be that selfish?
Well, listen, the guilt trip is not going to work either. So no, I'm just saying. Nobody
cares about their grandkids.
Well, I think
I'm just saying.
Well, no, there's this dichotomy you're bringing up because it's kind of like, just even like the straw thing, the simple thing, like, could we all give up straws and maybe manufacturers come with a new resource, but it ends up being an inconvenience for people, so they're like, can I really? Forget it. I don't need to worry about that straw.
The motivating factor for people is not guilt and shame as much as that's thrown around and used to build policy of some sort. That's not what motivates people.
You're right.
What really motivates people is what makes them feel good.
Yes.
And that's the essence of a healthy person.
Yep.
So the direction and the political attack is to guilt, as if
Well, it makes me feel good to hug a tree.
As if grandma.
That might just be good for me in the tree.
Well, if that makes you feel good, you see, now there's a reconnection.
Yeah.
So there is a fundamental health attached to shifting a way in which we perceive this thing. It makes us feel good when we also serve the earth, when we serve each other, when we have food that's not poisoning us, when we have water that's not poisoning us, when we get to see our children be healthy because of the environments that we've allowed them to have.
Yes.
Right?
Right. So how do we all take initiative?
Well, the initiative is this. It's interesting because you mentioned the ladies all come together, right? You mentioned you all come. Well, listen, it's not, that's exactly the solution, but with the municipalities. The municipalities, our infrastructure is so whack. We're wasting probably 40 to 60% of the energy that's produced anyways for municipalities and the cities to come together and improve the infrastructure so we don't have to burn the coal to run our generators that create the energy. Things like that. And then you have a broader scope of what are the state's priorities. Now, California is the golden state, the beautiful state. Well, unfortunately, it's losing that reputation due to a number of things. So they should be concerned about, as they are, coming together to keep and to maintain the beauty of this particular state. Why? It makes us feel good. It makes those that perceive us feel good. So things get done.
Well, more than that, it actually ensures your personal security. It's not,
and that feels good.
It's not safe to build your house on a ridge or in a canyon. Those wildfires are gonna.
That's why they used to have yurts and tents back in the day.
Hey, you're the expert.
Quick
but
moving.
Once again, that's fear being used as a motivator as opposed to the common sense application.
But not really, Thomas. It's not fear. It's being smart. So we need to delineate between fear and smart.
Don't ever connect fear with smart.
Well, no, but if you're an indigenous person, they're not going to put the tent on the ledge because they're going to feel in it and they're going to know oh, there's going to be a movement in this land. I'm going to move over here.
Well,
The wisdom prevails.
That's intelligence. You see,
Yeah.
that for me. That's a different. It's a framework that I think our framers need to take a look at, because we're kind of beating each other up with the guilt trips all the time, and that doesn't inspire anybody to
Doesn't that really
do
come to
anything good.
entitlement? So really, besides fear and guilt, isn't some of this entitlement? Like, I am entitled to do this, but could you do a little bit less of entitlement?
In America, that's a really hard conversation to have, because those who are making the decisions don't feel that they are entitled, as they are taking the lion's share of the resources.
Right.
They, instead of holding themselves accountable and responsible for that attitude, they really are making enemies and pointing to a distraction of the other, the poor, who are not able to buy better votes for themselves.
Right.
So,
well, you're talking, we're not a third world country, so people can take initiative here and not be poor if they choose to, right?
well, not everyone.
Well, then you're dealing with a certain mental illness.
In fact, Climate Reality is just making a partnership with the Poor People's Campaign. Because what ends up happening is that those who have the cellular devices, have the cool cars, live in the gated communities, are the consumers of all this fabulous energy.
Right.
Where does it get generated, processed, distributed, stored? In poor people's communities. In southeast Chicago, I walked next to a BP refinery. The air was so acrid I could barely even breathe. There was coal ash mountains
You were
there.
probably out early in the morning when that was happening, right?
Just here on the other side of LA, I walked by another receptacle. There's processing. There's oil derricks.
But can't
they get positioned in poor people's neighborhoods.
Can't you say that with a re-infrastructuring and an actual realizing of the potential of what we have available to us already, that we wouldn't need a fraction of the energy that we use?
Yes, that's the good news. That's such great news.
So it's infrastructure. It's a huge infrastructure
Infrastructure and a political willingness.
Yeah.
And the consumer is so interesting enough. You could all turn your lights off at night.
We know the country's interested in infrastructure. So that's one of the things that's happening. But that's one of the things that could happen really fast.
So imagine this. So I keep thinking to myself, what if I could paint a world that is fossil free, no dependence on that oil, coal, and gas? Fracking is really
absurd.
Yeah.
It's absurd. We're going to poison all the water.
Okay, first generation fracking took 75,000 gallons of water. Second generation, 9 million gallons of water. Now, 30 to 50 million gallons of water for third generation frack wells. Without water, there's no life.
Yeah. There you go.
The sweet water on the planet is tiny in the hydrological cycle. So water, we really need to take care of our water, protect our water, honor it. The rivers, Los Angeles River has as much of a fall in 51 miles as all of the Mississippi River. There's tremendous power in respecting our water.
I think it feels like a hub. I think it feels like that we have this hub of getting to realize our potential, at least energetically speaking. You have all these other spokes that can move to the hub. So there seems like it's not just one thing or the other.
No.
It's you've got all of these wonderful little elements that actually we're capable of doing.
Right.
So if anything, these political agendas, the only thing they really probably have to offer on the huge scale is infrastructure. And then from there, when that infrastructure becomes more refined, then our state levels can come in, and then our municipalities can cooperate. But as that's set up right now, it's a very tricky situation to shift our electric grids, and the people that own those things, and they're privately owned. So actually, the paperwork that goes in there is just a freaking nightmare.
Well, it's easier and easier with technologies. They have machines that take chemical or plastics and turn it back to oil. So in small island nations or third world countries, these little machines, they can convert it themselves and they can make money off of it. So there's no waste. you don't have to have lights at night. You know,
Right.
Sri Lanka back 8-10 years ago was taking biomass to generate energy. It was just the black market that was controlling the power. But if we really get beyond just having lights on,
The damn oil. It's the Industrial Revolution. Fuck everything. Look what they did with the oil. They wiped out all the whales. Look what they did. They wipe out the stuff to get the oil to light the lamp. Now they're digging up, and now they've dug up so much stuff we can't even see a blue sky.
so if we keep
So the absurdity of it all, the absurdity of the tangible reality of the space that we live in doesn't shift, we're effed.
That's right.
So the
You got it.
in a nutshell.
Well, I
There
can
it
tell you
is.
one thing. If you've got 200 million unhealthy people taking antidepressants,
Which we probably have.
yeah, we got.
a
I know
lot.
we've got. So I saw some number, 80 million women on them, and another 30, 40 million men on them, or something like that. God knows how many kids we got on them. The point is that they won't be able to see or get in touch with the nuanced reality
Right.
of a healthy planet, because
Yeah.
why? Their own planet is messed up.
Be clear, first of all. Be clear. What are the things that are altering your reality? And then just be clear.
Mental health relative
Yeah.
to our ability to address these issues
Yeah.
is also one of those spokes that goes into the hub.
Yes.
You know,
It's true.
I rarely hear that connected to
It is
a
true.
solution to being able to see clearly and make good choices that would actually affect the planet positively.
It's very important. We don't serve alcohol at this kind of an experience. I don't serve alcohol at TEDx JoyScoreLive because I want people to be thinking clearly. It's a very complicated time to be alive on the planet, and it's going to take all of us all the time doing everything we can as quickly as possible. How can we get those ideas out there? How can we connect to as many as quickly as possible? The solutions are there. We lack the will and willingness to connect them.
Hey, let me counter you. I think we have the will and the willingness as our eyes begin to clear and we get to see actually what's going on around us.
Yeah, the
And I-
veil is lifting.
And I think
in
that
so many places.
I think it really is, and that's not even. That's a good pun on you, TEDxVail. Lift the
There you go.
TEDxVail.
Wow.
Lift that TEDxVail, baby.
You need to have the blue star Kachina there. He's the one that drops the veil at Vail.
Well, Kat Haber. I mean, wow. I mean, have anything? I mean, I feel like I'm inspired to take another look and to take myself away from my busy-bodied mindsets of imaginary stories and actually, you know, tell the stories, shift the creative impetus to like right now I'm writing a surfing script, and I have a mountain climbing script, and it has to do with these wonderful elements that we use and appreciate. And even within the creators in Hollywood, they can shine lights within the context to raise consciousness within the works that they do. It doesn't have to be all doom
G.I.
and gloom,
Joe.
or guilt-ridden placement. You know, we can all do our part. You know.
So, Kat, you're about to share. There's three things. I see it.
Three things I didn't say that I feel like I should. One is we need to account differently for the way that we punish the commons for the pollution of the private companies. So we need to price in carbon. That's really important. And
Accurately price it in, because it is priced.
Yeah.
Accurately price it in.
Right, and I think a fee and dividend is the most equitable way to do that. So you put a price on it at the point of extraction, and everywhere along the supply chain that resource is used, then the price of that gets factored in, rather than a cap and trade, which I fear may become gamed.
Ah, interesting.
The other piece is I was arrested in D.C. at protesting the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I promised my husband and son that I would not be arrested. I didn't intend to be arrested. It happened. It broke my heart, and I sobbed literally for 2 hours. And they kept asking me, "Why are you doing that?" And I kept going back to all the parts of life that are at risk, from wells, pipelines, pumping stations, deep water LNG ports, and those communities that had to give up their private rights for the benefit of those private multinational corporations, and they kept, first of all, FERC is not a federal energy regulatory commission. It is a group that is funded by oil and gas companies.
Of course, you see, you got the criminal and you got the
Yes.
fox in the hen house right there.
Yes.
That's usually how it is, though, isn't it? We
It
always got
is.
foxes in the hen house. Ton to rustle those bad boys out of there.
Yeah. And from that, though, it was quite enlightening and gave me compassion for the people who were protesting at Standing Rock, because they were taking a stand for the water, opposing the pipeline and the spillage that will happen. We have hundreds of spills in Alaska every year. They want to build a 700-mile-long pipeline to carry
Yeah.
fossil fuels.
You know, it's funny to.
I think to take the demand out of it and the rebuild infrastructure, keep focusing on the renewables, will allow these things to fade away gracefully.
These silly ideas.
Yeah, I think but
And
they're
just
old
to-
ideas. We're repeating the same darn thing.
Well, it's kind of a silly
We've been here
idea.
in
Like,
the 70s.
let
We
me
were
drill the
here.
earth and write a pipeline for miles and miles upon end. That,
Right.
like, a logical, sane person knows that's a ridiculous idea.
So we got like
But
one,
I
we got
have
like
all
one, we
of
got
my
like 1
state
minute.
is
minute.
doing it. I have 3 conservative. I have 2 senators and a congressman.
Have him call and have a talk with me. When I was a little kid,
Oh,
I
I
wrote,
would love to.
I wrote Bruce Babbitt in 4th grade about his oil crisis and how to handle it. I'll explain to them how silly they are.
But you know what? See, as these guys come up, and there seems to be a corporate awareness. A good part of the plans of corporations too is to innately serve the community in some way. They understand that that's part of their responsibility. There's more consciousness that's happening in that direction,
Yeah.
and as these young guys come up and they see what's needed, they will do it. They are doing it.
Yeah, which is why I invest so much life force in inspiring young leaders.
Well, you've inspired me.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I so thank you for coming in and sharing your wisdom and allowing us to banter like this. And Suzanne, awesome find.
Yeah, thank
what a great
you.
resource for all sorts of things. And if you're ever in the area, and we're gonna do this every Wednesday,
I'd love to have you back.
and you you got some new light to shed in the situation,
Yeah.
you come on back here and talk to us,
Well,
please.
here's the way to get through the heartbreaks. It's not so much like the one thing, but it's the getting back up after the heartbreak. I feel like that's the moment of hero-ness.
Yeah.
And that really comes from loving the people who are standing in the way, who are not yet allies, and being grateful for them to reflect back to me the part of me that has not yet risen to that level.
That's so beautiful. Good. Let's send you out.